The sun clawed at the Superstition Mountains, its heat turning the red dust to a shimmering haze. I crouched by my claim, a pitiful scratch in the earth where I'd spent 2 years chasing fool's gold. My hands, calloused and stained, gripped a pickaxe, the wood warm against my palms. Sweat stung my eyes, and the air smelled of baked stone and creosote. At 36, I'd learned the desert didn't care about your past, only how long you could survive its indifference. But today, something felt wrong. The silence was too heavy, broken only by the faint clink of my pick against rock. I straightened, wiping my brow, and scanned the horizon. Jagged peaks loomed like the bones of some ancient beast, and the creek below my claim barely trickled, its water more mud than stream. That's when I saw him, a small figure, stumbling through the sagebrush, maybe 100 yards off. A boy, no older than 12, his steps uneven, like a calf caught in a snare. His clothes were Apache, fringed leather torn and bloodied, his dark hair matted with dust. Most men in Dusty Hollow would have drawn their Colt first, asked questions later. The Apache wars had left scars on both sides, raids, ambushes, bodies left for the vultures, but I wasn't most men, not anymore. I set my pick down, slow and deliberate, and raised my hands to show they were empty. The boy hadn't seen me yet, his eyes fixed on the creek. His lips were cracked, his cheeks hollow, like he hadn't eaten in days. I'd seen that kind of hunger before, in the war, in the faces of prisoners and refugees. It didn't care about tribe or skin. I took a step forward, boots crunching on the gravel, and called out, soft as I could, "Hey kid, you hurt?" He froze, head snapping toward me. His eyes, wide and dark, held a mix of fear and defiance. He clutched his side, where a dark stain spread across his tunic. Blood, fresh enough to glint in the sun. He said something in Apache, sharp and quick, but his voice cracked, too weak to carry far. I didn't understand the words, but I knew pain when I saw it. I pointed to the creek, then to my shack, a leaning pile of boards a quarter-mile up the slope. Water, food, come on. He didn't move, just stared, like he was weighing whether I'd shoot him or worse. I kept my hands up, stepping closer. "I ain't gonna hurt you. Swear it." My voice sounded rough, unused. Living alone does that to a man. Finally, he nodded, just a flicker, and staggered toward the creek. I followed, keeping my distance, watching his knees buckle with every step. At the creek, he dropped to his knees and scooped water with shaking hands, drinking until he coughed. I knelt a few feet away, dipping my canteen to fill it. Up close, I saw the wound, a jagged gash under his ribs, likely from a blade. It wasn't deep, but it was angry, crusted with dirt. "That needs cleaning," I said, pointing. He flinched, pulling back, but I held up the canteen, offering it. He took it, cautious, and drank again. I didn't ask his name. Didn't need to. Names don't mean much when you're bleeding out in the desert. But I saw the beaded bracelet on his wrist, intricate patterns that marked him as someone's son, maybe someone important. That thought sent a chill through me. The Apache didn't take kindly to their own going missing, especially not kids. I'd heard stories in Dusty Hollow warbands burning ranches for less. "Let's get you patched up," I said, standing. He hesitated, then followed, limping. The walk to my shack took longer than it should have, the boy pausing every few steps to catch his breath. My place wasn't much a single room with a cot, a stove, and a table cluttered with tools and a tintype of my old life. Sarah and little Ben, their faces faded but sharp in my memory. Cholera took them in 2066, right after the war. I don't talk about it. Don't need to. Inside, I sat the boy on my cot and rummaged for my medical kit, a tin box with bandages, a needle, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. He watched me like a cornered animal, but he didn't bolt when I cleaned the wound. The whiskey stung, and he hissed, but he held still, tougher than most grown men. I stitched the gash, clumsy but steady, and wrapped it with clean cloth. "You'll live," I told him. He didn't answer, just stared at the tin type on the table. I heated beans and cornbread on the stove, the smell filling the shack. He ate like he hadn't seen food in a week, scraping the plate clean. I didn't push him to talk, didn't need to. The way he moved, the way he watched the door, told me enough. He was running from something or someone was looking for him. By dusk, the air cooled, and the desert went quiet, save for the distant howl of a coyote. I stepped outside to check the horizon, my Winchester leaning against the doorframe. That's when I saw dust rising from the trail to Dusty Hollow. 3 riders, moving fast. I recognized Caleb Holt's broad frame, his hat tilted low, flanked by 2 miners I knew from the saloon, Rusty and Jed. Trouble, no question. I went back inside, checking the boy. He was asleep, curled under my blanket, but his breathing was steady. Good. I grabbed the rifle and stepped out to meet them. Caleb reined up hard, his horse snorting. Elias Kane, he barked, voice like gravel. You got a problem. What's that, Caleb? I kept my tone even, rifle loose in my hands. Words out. Smoke signals in the hills. Apaches looking for one of their own. A boy. His eyes narrowed, flicking to my shack. You wouldn't know nothing about that, would you? I didn't blink. Just working my claim. Ain't seen no one. Rusty, a wiry kid barely 20, shifted in his saddle. Come on, Elias. We saw tracks by your creek. Small ones. You hidin' a savage? Careful with that word, I said, voice low. And tracks don't mean nothing. Could be anyone. Caleb leaned forward, spitting into the dust. You're a damn fool, Kane. Apache don't take kindly to their kin going missin'. You want a warband burnin' this valley, that's your business. But it'll be our problem, too. Jed, older and quieter, spoke up. Just hand him over, Elias. Save us all the trouble. I tightened my grip on the rifle. Ain't got no one to hand over. You boys head back. I'll handle my own. Caleb's face darkened, but he didn't push. Not yet. You're playing a dangerous game, Kane. Hope you're ready for what's coming. He wheeled his horse, and the three rode off, dust trailing behind them. Back inside, the boy was awake, eyes wide. He'd heard everything. They'll come back, he said, his English broken but clear. First words he'd spoken I could understand. Maybe, I said, setting the rifle down. Who's looking for you, kid? He hesitated, then touched his bracelet. My father, Naka. My blood went cold. Naka was no ordinary Apache. He was a war chief, feared from Tucson to Santa Fe. If this boy was his son, I wasn't just hiding a kid. I was sitting on a powder keg. Why'd you run? I asked. He looked away, fingers tracing the bandage. Soldiers. They attacked our camp. I ran, got lost. I didn't press. Didn't need to. The Apache wars were a meat grinder. Settlers, soldiers, tribes, all bleeding each other dry. I'd seen it up close, back when I wore a blue coat. Things I'd done that still woke me up at night, sweating, smelling smoke and blood. I shook the thought off. Rest, I told him. We'll figure it out come morning. But morning didn't come. Not the way I wanted. Deep in the night, I woke to a sound that turned my guts to ice drums, slow and steady, echoing through the canyons. Apache war drums. I grabbed my rifle and peered through the shack's only window. Shadows moved in the moonlight, maybe a dozen, maybe more, spreading out in a crescent around my claim. Horses, silent as ghosts, their riders painted for war. The boy stirred, sitting up. Tarak, he said, pointing to himself. First time he'd given me a name. Elias, I replied, keeping my eyes on the shadows. Your father out there? He nodded. Fear and hope warring in his eyes. He thinks you took me. Great, I muttered. I checked my revolver, 6 shots loaded, and slung a bandolier over my shoulder. Stay here, Tarak. Don't move. I stepped outside, rifle raised but not aimed, heart pounding like a hammer. The drum stopped, and the silence was worse. A single figure rode forward, his silhouette massive against the moon. Naka. Even in the dark, I could feel his eyes, sharp as a blade, cutting through me. White man, he called, his English thick but clear. You have my son. Return him, or this land drinks your blood. I swallowed, throat dry as the desert. He's alive, hurt but alive. I didn't take him. Found him by my creek. Naka's horse shifted, hooves crunching. You lie. No white man shows kindness without a price. I lowered the rifle, just a fraction. No price. He was starving, bleeding. I patched him up, that's all. A murmur rippled through the warriors, bows drawn, arrows glinting. Naka raised a hand, silencing them. Show me my son. Now. I glanced back at the shack. Tarak was at the window, watching. I nodded to him, and he stepped out, limping but steady. Naka's eyes softened for a split second, then hardened again. Why is he here, white man? Why not return him? He was too weak to move, I said. I was going to bring him to you at dawn. Naka dismounted, moving closer, his hand on a knife at his belt. You know who I am, yet you kept my son. I know, I said, voice steady despite the fear clawing my chest. And I know what it's like to lose a child. I couldn't let him die. Something flickered in Naka's eyes. Grief, maybe, or recognition. But before he could speak, A shout broke the silence. Hooves thundered from the trail. Caleb and his miners, torches high, rifles ready. "Kane!" Caleb roared. "Time's up! Hand over the boy or we burn it all!" The Apache warriors turned, arrows now aimed at the newcomers. I stood between two fires, Tarak at my side, knowing I'd just made the choice that could end me. I raised my hands, rifle still in one, and faced Naka. "I'm not your enemy," I said, "but I won't let them take him either." The night held its breath, and I knew there was no going back. The air hung thick with the promise of blood, the kind of stillness that comes before a storm breaks. I stood in the moonlight, rifle loose in my hands, Tarak at my side, his small frame tense but steady. Naka's warriors formed a crescent around my shack, their bows drawn, arrows glinting like fangs in the dark. Behind me, Caleb Holt and his miners, 6 of them now, torches blazing closed in from the trail, their rifles cocked. I was caught between two fires, and neither side cared much for talking. "Elias Kane," Caleb bellowed, his voice cutting through the night. "You've got one chance to hand over that savage boy, or we'll burn this place to ash." Naka's head snapped toward Caleb, his eyes narrowing. He didn't speak, but his hand tightened on the knife at his belt. His warriors shifted, hooves crunching the gravel, ready to loose their arrows at the miners. I raised my free hand, palm open, trying to hold the world together. "Caleb, back off," I called, voice steady despite the fear clawing my gut. "This ain't your fight." "It's all our fight," Caleb spat, his torch casting jagged shadows. "You think hiding an Apache kid won't bring hell down on Dusty Hollow? You're a traitor, Kane." Tarak pressed closer to me, his bandaged side brushing my leg. He whispered something in Apache, urgent, but I couldn't catch it. I glanced at Naka, hoping for a sign he'd listen. "Your son's alive because of me," I said. "I didn't take him. He came to me, hurt. Let's talk this out." Naka's gaze was cold iron. "Talk is cheap, white man. You kept my son. You knew who he was." Before I could answer, a new voice cut through a woman's, sharp and clear. "Enough." Lila, the miner's daughter, stepped out from behind Caleb's men, her braids swinging as she planted herself between the groups. Her father, Jed, cursed under his breath, but she ignored him. "Elias saved that boy," she said, glaring at Caleb. "You want to start a war over a kid who'd be dead without him?" Caleb's face twisted. "Stay out of this, girl. This is men's business." Lila didn't flinch. "Men's business is killing without thinking. You're stirring up trouble we can't afford." I caught her eye, grateful but wary. Lila was barely 20, sharp-tongued and braver than most, but she was risking her neck standing here. Naka watched her, his expression unreadable, then spoke in Apache to his warriors. The bows lowered slightly, but the tension didn't break. "My son," he said in English, pointing at Tarak. "Now." Tarak stepped forward, but I grabbed his shoulder, gentle but firm. "He's hurt, Naka. Let me explain." A rifle shot cracked the night, the bullet kicking up dust at my feet. One of Caleb's men, a twitchy prospector named Rusty, lowered his barrel, grinning. "Enough talk, Kane. Hand him over, or the next one's in your chest." Naka's warriors reacted like a coiled snake. Arrows knocked again, aimed at the miners. I shoved Tarak behind me, raising my rifle. "Anybody shoots, we all die," I growled. "Caleb, call your dogs off." Caleb hesitated, his men shifting uneasily. Lila stepped closer to me, her voice low. "They're planning to burn you out, Elias. I heard him in the saloon. They want the boy dead and your claim for themselves." My blood went cold. Caleb wasn't just scared of the Apache, he saw a chance to take my land, maybe even stake a bigger claim in the valley. I glanced at Naka, who was watching the miners now, his knife half drawn. "Naka," I said, "these men ain't with me. They're trouble, same as they are for you." Naka's eyes flicked to Caleb, then back to me. "You speak for them?" "No," I said. "I speak for myself, and for your son." Tarak tugged my sleeve, his voice a whisper. "He does not trust you. He thinks you want something." I knelt, keeping my eyes on Naka. "What's he saying, kid?" Tarak's face was pale, his eyes haunted. "He says, 'You killed my people. Long ago, I saw you.'" The words hit like a sledgehammer. My breath caught, and the desert spun. I saw it again, the burning village, the screams, the smoke thick with death. 2064, New Mexico. My unit, under Captain Hayes, had raised an Apache camp. Women, children, didn't matter. I'd followed orders, but the faces never left me. Tarak's eyes, wide and accusing, were one of them. You were there, I said, barely a whisper. How? I was 5, Tarak said. Hid in the rocks. Watched you burn everything. I stood, legs shaking, the weight of his words crushing me. Naka was watching, his warriors tense, sensing the shift. Caleb's men were edging closer, torches flaring. I was losing ground, fast. Tarak, I said, voice hoarse. I ain't that man anymore. I saved you because you feel guilt? He snapped, his English sharp now. Not enough. Naka stepped closer, his knife fully drawn. What does my son say, white man? I swallowed, the truth burning my throat. He says I was there, years ago, when my unit... I couldn't finish. The words choked me. Naka's face darkened, and his warriors murmured, anger rippling through them. You took my kin, Naka said, voice low and deadly. Now you take my son? I didn't take him, I shouted, desperation breaking through. I found him, bleeding, dying. I stitched him up, fed him, gave him my blanket. Whatever I did before, I'm not that man now. Lila grabbed my arm. Elias, they're moving. She pointed to Caleb's men, spreading out, rifles raised. They're gonna shoot, Apache or no. I spun, rifle up, caught between Naka's warband and Caleb's posse. Caleb, last chance, I called. Back off, or you'll have more than me to deal with. Caleb laughed, cold and hard. You're done, Kane, you and that savage brat. Before I could answer, an arrow whistled past, burying itself in the dirt near Caleb's horse. Naka's warriors were done waiting. Caleb's men fired back, a wild shot cracking into my shack's wall. Tarak ducked, and I shoved him toward the door. Inside now. Lila followed, dragging Tarak into the shack as I fired a warning shot over Caleb's head. Next one's in you, I roared. The miners hesitated, but Naka's warriors didn't. Arrows flew, one grazing Rusty's arm. He screamed, dropping his torch, which flared in the dry grass. Stop, I yelled, stepping into the open, rifle raised. Naka, Caleb, both of you. This ain't the way. Naka held up a hand, and his warriors paused. Caleb's men froze, outnumbered but itching for a fight. The fire from Rusty's torch spread, licking at the sagebrush. I smelled smoke, sharp and bitter, like my nightmares come to life. Elias, Lila hissed from the doorway. They're circling around back. Caleb's got more men coming. I cursed under my breath. Caleb wasn't just here for Tarak, he wanted a massacre, a way to justify taking my claim and driving the Apache out for good. I turned to Naka, knowing I had seconds to change the tide. Your son's alive because I chose different this time, I said. Let me prove it. Let me get him to you safe. Naka studied me, his face a mask of stone. Why should I trust a man who burns villages? Because I'm here, risking my neck for your boy, I said. I could have handed him to them. I didn't. Tarak stepped out, ignoring my order to stay put. He spoke in Apache, his voice steady despite the pain in his side. Naka listened, his expression shifting grief, anger, maybe a flicker of doubt. Tarak pointed to me, then to the shack, miming the act of bandaging his wound. He was telling his story, the one I couldn't tell for myself. Caleb's voice broke the moment. Enough of this. We end it now. He raised his rifle, aiming at Tarak. I didn't think my body moved, tackling Tarak to the ground as the shot rang out. Pain seared my shoulder, a grazing wound, hot and wet. Lila screamed, and Naka's warriors loosed a volley, arrows pinning 2 of Caleb's men to the dirt. Chaos erupted. The fire spread, smoke choking the air. I dragged Tarak behind a boulder, Lila crouching beside us. We gotta move, I said, blood soaking my shirt. They'll burn us out. Where? Lila asked, her voice shaking but resolute. Up the canyon, I said. There's a path, hidden. If we make it, we can lose 'em. Tarak grabbed my arm, his eyes fierce. My father will not stop. He thinks you are Wasichu a liar. Then we make him see the truth, I said, wincing as I reloaded my rifle. But first, we survive. We ran, the fire roaring behind us, its heat licking my back. Arrows and bullets crisscrossed the night, and I heard Caleb's men shouting, their torches dotting the darkness like demon eyes. Naka's warriors pursued, silent and deadly, their horses weaving through the sagebrush. The canyon loomed ahead, its walls jagged and black, a narrow path barely visible in the moonlight. We scrambled up the slope, rocks sliding under our boots. My shoulder burned, but I kept Tarak ahead of me, shielding him. Lila stayed close, her breath ragged. They're gaining, she panted, glancing back. I risked a look. Naka's warriors were closer, their silhouettes sharp against the fire's glow. Caleb's men were spreading out, trying to flank us. The canyon was our only shot, but it was a death trap if we got caught. At the canyon mouth, I pushed Tarak and Lila into a crevice, hidden by an overhang. "Stay low," I whispered, checking my revolver. 6 shots left. The bandolier was half empty. I leaned out, scanning the darkness. Hooves thundered. Closer now. A shadow moved a warrior, dismounted, creeping along the rocks. I aimed, then hesitated. Killing him would prove Naka right that I was just another white man with blood on his hands. Instead, I fired at the ground near his feet, the shot echoing off the canyon walls. He froze, then retreated, shouting to the others. "They'll come for us," Lila said, her voice trembling. "Elias, what's the plan?" I looked at Tarak, his face pale but determined. "You said I burned your village," I told him. "You're right. I was there. I followed orders, and I've hated myself every day since. But I'm not that man now. Help me prove it to your father." Tarak stared, his eyes searching mine. "Why?" he asked. "Why save me?" I swallowed, the truth heavy. "Because I see my son in you. He'd be your age now. I couldn't save him, but I can save you." He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "I will speak to my father, but you must come with me." "Elias, that's suicide," Lila said. "They'll kill you before you open your mouth." "Maybe," I said, "but it's the only way." We moved deeper into the canyon, the walls closing in, the air thick with the smell of dust and fear. The drums started again, slow and relentless, echoing off the stone. Naka was coming, and so was Caleb. I'd burned one bridge and built another, but both were crumbling fast. Tarak's trust was all I had left, and it was fragile as a broken arrow. As we reached a narrow pass, a shout rang out Apache, sharp and commanding. Naka stepped into view, his warriors fanning out behind him. Caleb's men appeared on the opposite ridge, rifles glinting. I pushed Tarak and Lila behind a boulder, my shoulders screaming with pain. "Naka!" I called, stepping into the open. "Your son's alive. Let me bring him to you." Naka's knife gleamed in his hand. "You bring death, Wasichu." "Always." Tarak stepped out, ignoring my warning, and spoke in Apache, his voice carrying over the drums. He pointed to me, then to his bandage, his words fast and fierce. Naka's face shifted, doubt creeping in, but his warriors were restless, arrows knocked. Caleb's voice boomed from the ridge. "End it, Kane, or we will." I turned, rifle raised, caught between two worlds ready to tear each other apart. Tarak grabbed my arm, his eyes wide. "He listens," he whispered, "but they do not." He pointed to Naka's warriors, some breaking ranks, moving closer. A single arrow flew, grazing my leg. I stumbled, blood soaking my pants. Lila screamed, and Tarak shouted in Apache, his voice cracking. Naka raised his hand, but the warriors hesitated, their anger boiling over. Caleb's men fired, bullets ricocheting off the rocks. The canyon was a powder keg, and I was the spark. "Tarak," I said, gripping his shoulder. "Tell your father I'll die for you if I have to. But I need you to trust me first." His eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw something other than fear, hope, maybe, or the beginning of belief. But as the drums grew louder and the shadows closed in, I knew one truth. Trust might save us, or it might bury us all. The canyon walls loomed like silent judges, their shadows swallowing the moonlight. My shoulder burned, blood soaking my shirt, and my leg throbbed where an arrow had grazed it. Tarak crouched beside me, his eyes fierce despite the pain in his side. Lila pressed against the boulder, her breath shallow, her braid dusted with red grit. Naka's warriors fanned out below, their silhouettes sharp against the flickering firelight from the burning sagebrush. On the opposite ridge, Caleb Holt and his miners ate now, reinforced held their rifles steady, torches casting an angry glow. The drums had stopped, but the silence was worse, heavy with the weight of 100 drawn bows and cocked guns. "Tarak," I whispered, gripping his shoulder. "You told your father I'd die for you. Mean it?" He nodded, his face pale but resolute. "He listens. But they," he pointed to the warriors breaking ranks, "want blood." I glanced at Lila. "Stay here. If this goes south, run for the creek. Don't look back." Her eyes flashed. "I ain't leaving you, Elias. Not now." I didn't argue. No time. Naka's voice cut through the night, sharp in Apache, then English. "Wasichu, bring my son or we take him." Caleb's laugh echoed from the ridge. "Hand him over, Kane, or we'll finish what the savages started. I stood, wincing as my leg buckled, and raised my rifle, not aimed, just visible. Naka, I called. Your boy's alive because I chose him over them. I nodded toward Caleb's men. Let me bring him to you, and we end this without more graves. Naka stepped forward, his knife glinting, his face unreadable. You speak of peace, but your kind brings only death. Tarak tugged my sleeve, his voice low. He does not trust, but I will speak. Before I could stop him, Tarak stepped into the open, hands raised. He shouted in Apache, his voice carrying over the canyon, steady despite his wound. He pointed to me, then to his bandage, his words fast and fierce. I caught fragments my name. Saved. Fed. Naka's warriors paused, some lowering their bows. But others, younger ones, shifted restlessly. Arrows still knocked. Caleb's voice boomed. Enough talk. We end this now. A shot rang out, the bullet kicking up dust near Tarak's feet. I dove, tackling him behind the boulder as arrows flew in response, one pinning a miner's hat to a rock. The man screamed, scrambling back. Lila, cover! I hissed, shoving her lower. I fired a shot over Caleb's head, not aiming to kill yet. Caleb, you're gonna get us all slaughtered. Naka's warriors advanced, silent as wolves, their horses weaving through the rocks. Caleb's men spread out, torches flaring, trying to flank us. The canyon was a death trap, and I was running out of time. My shoulder screamed with every move, but I reloaded my revolver 4 shots left. Tarak, I said, we can't stay here. We gotta move deeper, find a choke point. He nodded, pointing to a narrow pass ahead, barely wide enough for a man. There. They cannot follow all at once. Lila, you with us? I asked. She gripped a rock, her knuckles white. Till the end, Elias. We scrambled toward the pass, rocks sliding under our boots, the air thick with dust and smoke. The fire from the sagebrush had spread, licking the canyon walls, its heat searing my back. An arrow whistled past, grazing my arm, and I stifled a curse. Tarak stumbled, his wound slowing him, but I hauled him up, my own pain forgotten. At the pass, we ducked behind a slab of sandstone, its surface cool against my cheek. The path was tight, a natural bottleneck. Good for defense, bad for escape. I checked my bandolier, 10 rounds left. Lila tore a strip from her skirt, tying it around my bleeding arm. You're a mess, Elias, she muttered. But her eyes were steady. Been worse, I said, managing a grim smile. Tarak, can you talk to your father again? He shook his head. Not here. Too many warriors. They want fight, not words. I peered around the rock. Naka's men were closing in, dismounted now, moving like shadows. Caleb's miners held the high ground, their torches dotting the ridge like fireflies. A sandstorm was brewing, the wind howling, kicking up red dust that stung my eyes. The desert itself was turning against us. A shout in Apache Naka's voice, commanding. His warriors stopped, but one, a young brave with a scar across his cheek, broke ranks, charging the pass with a raised tomahawk. I aimed, then lowered my rifle. Don't make me do this, I muttered, firing at the ground. The shot echoed, and he froze, glaring, but retreated when Naka barked again. Elias, Lila whispered, pointing. 2 of Caleb's men were creeping along the ridge, dynamite sticks in hand. My gut twisted. They weren't just here for Tarak. They wanted to blast the canyon, bury us all. Lila, stay with Tarak, I said, handing her my revolver. Shoot only if you have to. Where you going? She asked, eyes wide. To stop a massacre. I moved low, using the rocks for cover, my shoulder and legs screaming with every step. The wind howled, the sandstorm thickening, reducing visibility to shadows and glints. I reached the ridge just as the miners lit a fuse. Drop it! I shouted, rifle up. The miner, a burly man named Hank, spun, dropping the dynamite. I kicked it away, the fuse hissing in the dirt. Hank lunged, his knife flashing, but I swung my rifle butt, catching his jaw. He crumpled, out cold. The second miner raised his hands, backing off. Don't shoot, Kane. Caleb's orders. Then tell Caleb he's a dead man if he lights another. I growled, stomping out the fuse. A cry from below Tarak's voice, sharp with pain. I spun, heart pounding. Lila was dragging him back, an arrow in the dirt where he'd stood. Naka's warriors were closing the pass, and Caleb's men were firing wildly, bullets ricocheting off the rocks. I slid back down, grabbing Tarak. You hurt? He shook his head, clutching his side. They do not listen. My father tries, but they want blood. I looked at Lila, her face pale but fierce. We can't hold here. We gotta get to open ground, where Naka can see us. The sandstorm hit full force, a red wall of dust choking the air, blinding us. I led them through the pass, half carrying Tarak, Lila's hand on my back. We stumbled into a wider canyon, its floor littered with bones, coyote maybe, or men who'd crossed the wrong path. The storm roared, but I heard hooves, Naka's warriors breaking through. Naka, I shouted, voice raw. Call them off, I'm bringing your son. A shadow loomed Naka, on foot, his knife drawn. His warriors flanked him, but he raised a hand, holding them back. You run, Wasichu, like a coward. I run to keep him alive, I said, pushing Tarak forward. Look at him. He's your son, not my prisoner. Tarak spoke, his voice small but clear. He saved me, father. He could have let me die. He did not. The scarred warrior shouted, but Naka silenced him with a look. The storm howled, dust swirling like a red shroud. Caleb's men edged closer, and I knew we had seconds. Naka, I said, take the deal, or we all die here. Naka studied me, then Tarak, his face unreadable. Finally, he nodded once. Your land for my son. Safe passage for you and the woman. Caleb's laugh was a snarl. You're giving away our valley, Kane. You think we'll let that stand? Before I could answer, the scarred warrior broke ranks, his tomahawk raised, charging me. I dodged, but my leg gave out and I hit the ground, pain exploding. Tarak shouted, and Naka lunged, tackling the warrior. They grappled, dust flying, until Naka pinned him, knife to his throat. Enough! Naka roared in Apache, then English. This man spared my son. We honor that. Caleb's men fired, a bullet grazing Naka's arm. He didn't flinch, his eyes locked on me. Go, Wasichu. Take the woman. My warriors will hold them. I staggered to my feet, Lila pulling me up. Tarak, I said, you're with your father now. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. You are not Wasichu, he said, the words heavy. You are Elias. I managed a smile, blood and dust caking my face. Stay safe, kid. Lila and I ran, the storm covering our tracks, Naka's warriors clashing with Caleb's men behind us. Arrows flew, rifles cracked, and screams echoed through the canyon. I didn't look back. My claim was gone. My life stripped to nothing but the clothes on my back and the woman beside me. But Tarak was alive, and that was enough. Dawn broke as we reached the valley's edge, the storm settling, the air thick with the smell of blood and sage. I glanced back, the canyon a haze of dust and shadow. Naka and Tarak were gone, maybe alive, maybe not. Caleb's men would hunt me, but I'd face that another day. Leela touched my arm, her voice soft. You did right, Elias. Did I? I asked, staring at the horizon, where the sun bled red over the mountains. Lost everything. Not everything, she said, squeezing my hand. I didn't answer. Just walked, the dust settling behind me, a broken arrow half buried in the sand, glinting in the new light.